Welcome back to another Private Pilot Vlog, and thank you for watching. Today we have a super inspiring story from mother and daughter pilots, Robin and Katie. I saw this story on Instagram and I just want to share it with you. So first of all, we're going to speak to daughter, Katie. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's Texas this morning?
It's actually going to be a warm day today. It's been kind of cold lately, but it looks beautiful outside.
So your mom's in Chicago. We're going to speak with her in a few minutes, but I thought we'd have an initial chat if that's okay.
That's good.
So first of all, Katie, obviously your mom's a pilot. She's just recently retired, but how did you get into aviation?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to shorten it up. I actually went to college and I have a degree in dance. So I did not ever really want to fly growing up. My mom obviously had a really cool job and she would come to all the job fairs at school and everything, but it was always just kind of my mom's job. Like I never thought that that was something that I would do. And when I graduated college, I moved back home and I was kind of confused about what I wanted to do with my life. And my mom was like, hey, why don't you just try taking a flying lesson and just see if you like it. And if you don't have to do it. And I'm like, all right, Mom, fine. I'll go for it. So I went up in a little Cessna 152, and you know that feeling you get when you ride a roller coaster? I don't know if you like roller coasters, but you ride a roller coaster and you want to go again immediately, like right away. That's how I felt when I came back down. I was like, I want to do that again right now. So I knew I had caught the bug and everything just kind of fell into place from there.
So who took you up for your first experience? Was it someone you knew, or what did you do? Can you remember what you did on that first flight?
Oh yeah, I remember it very well. We had planned it for a while, so we called the local flight school. It was probably about a 15-minute drive from where I was living at the time at my mom's house, and it was just some kind of random instructor that was going to take me up. I didn't know anything about him previously, but we went up. Basically it was kind of just a hop in the plane and go type deal. Like he didn't really show me a whole lot about, the pre-flight or anything like that. He's like, okay, let's, come on. I'm like, all right. So from there, he let me do everything except for the landing. I mean, I did the taxiing, the takeoff, all the flying. It was, wonderful. It's only about an hour. It feels so quick, but it was, really great.
It sounds pretty much just like my experience, really. I mean, I'm assuming probably most people's experience is very similar, but it just reminds me of we were chatting a little bit before about 10 years ago when I started flying, and my first lesson, it's like a drug, isn't it, really? I don't do drugs, but I imagine it's like a drug, because as soon as it finishes, as soon as you land and you get out and you take it in, it's like, wow, I want to do that again. How do I do that so quickly,
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, I like to call myself an adrenaline junkie, right? Like I love that adrenaline pump, anything that has to do with that, hiking, flying, river rafting, anything like that. It's really exciting.
So how old were you when you graduated then?
So yeah, I was 22 when I graduated. I started when I was 18, yeah. So, and that was in 2016.
And then
I spent like a year doing other things, and then eventually started flying.
So tell me about the process. How did you choose a flying school?
Okay, yeah. So that's a great question. So I did my private at a mom and pop flight school, which is what we call it in the States. It's like I don't know if they call it that in the UK, but mom and pop is like a very small. They maybe have 2 airplanes and like 3 instructors. So, mom and pop opened it up and started their own flight school. And then I actually looked into Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I applied and got accepted, and I was planning to do their 4-year program, but I already had a degree, and that's kind of all that the airlines require. It doesn't matter what the degree is in. So I had the degree, and so my mom and I were looking at other flight schools, and ATP flight school came up, which was a fast-paced program. So we decided that would be sort of a better thing to do because, I needed to just get to the airlines as quickly as possible. So I ended up visiting a few. There was one in Chicago it was pretty small, and I knew the weather would kind of hold me back. So I visited one in Dallas and I visited one in Arizona. So I actually ended up going to the one in Arizona. This is their nicest location. It's very beautiful. They have 50 airplanes, maybe more, all brand new Cessna 172s and Piper Seminoles. And it's beautiful VFR flying like 350 days of the year. So it was great. I got through it very quickly.
What was the most challenging part about your training?
Yeah, that's also a good question. It was all relatively challenging. I had never done anything like that before. And a lot of it did kind of come naturally to me, but I think the hardest part was figuring out what to study, because you realize along the way that you don't know what you don't know. So people will start asking you questions and they're like, well, you're kind of expected to know that. And I'm like, I didn't know I needed to know that, you know? So that was a really hard part for me. And then I think the most challenging was getting through CFI school, my certified flight instructor license, because that really breaks down, okay, what do I not know and how can I go ahead and teach that? So that was a really, really challenging part during flight school.
So did you decide you want to be a CFI before you started training? Is that how it works over in the US? Is that,
Yeah,
of
so
course, so you went like 0 to hero and then CFI type of thing?
well, yeah, and that's what they say, 0 to hero is like you're going from 0 time to now teaching people how to fly. And you have about 250 flight hours when you get your first student. So it's like, I just learned all of this in 9 months, and now I'm going to go teach other people how to do it. But that's how you get your hours. Most people, I mean, you could do some other things, but it's hard to get a job right out of the commercial license gate. In the US, you have to have at least some sort of experience, but you can get a flight instructing job as soon as you get the license. So that's kind of the path that everybody goes down. And that's what ATP sells. They sell from 0 to CFI, instrument, flight instructor, and multi-engine instructor.
And would you, just out of interest, would you choose the same school again if you were going to redo everything, or to advise someone else, or would it just be on that person's particular decision to do that? I mean, what would you recommend, just out of interest?
Yeah. So I went to, they have Part 61 and Part 141 flight schools. They're two different ones. I went to a Part 61 flight school at ATP where it's a little bit more relaxed and there aren't as many sort of requirements that you have to meet. So Part 61 flight schools can kind of cut some corners in ways to help you save money, maybe. But Part 141 flight schools are a little bit more like a university type. They're more structured. They have, more regulations associated with them. So I actually work now at a Part 141 flight school. And I think it really depends on the person. I would personally probably go back to ATP in a heartbeat and do that whole fast track, because I love the challenge. I love the fast pace. I love, the constant grind every day. Whereas 141 can sometimes be a little bit more relaxed, and it gives you a little bit more of like an opportunity to have more ground school, do more simulators, stuff like that. So I've seen both, and it really just depends on the person.
So over here, we call it integrated or modular. So the integrated pretty much would be what you've done, whereas modular would be like, you get your BPL, and then you do some hour building to start your CPL, and then you do your, IR and your multi-engine, and so I guess that's the difference between the two, right?
Yeah, kind of like that.
So you were CFI, and you got a certain number of hours, and then you got your first airline job, right?
I made it, yes. Man, it was a long grind. I mean, I worked my butt off for like a good 3 years to get to the airlines as quickly as I possibly could. And when I got there, oh man, it was just such a relief. It was like, wow, this is what I've worked so hard for. This is what I've wanted, and I've made it. And like, you step foot into like that jet and you're just, wow, like this is the rest of my career. This is so wonderful. So it was a really amazing feeling to get to that point so quickly.
Yeah, so cool. So tell me about your first job then. Who was the employer? What kind of jet were you flying? And
Yeah. So my first job was with Envoy Air, which is essentially American Eagle. For those that live in the States, they'll probably be familiar with that. It's a subsidiary of American Airlines. So American Airlines flies, their jets all over the world, whereas American Eagle just is the puddle jumper. They fly from Dallas to somewhere else in Texas because Texas is so big. So I was flying the Embraer 175 for Envoy, which is what they call a large regional jet. So it's very, very fancy. Has auto thrust and autopilot and VNav, LNav. I mean, it has everything, all the bells and whistles. It's kind of like a little mini 727 and an Airbus like mixed together.
So you obviously got rated, but what was your first flight like on that jet? Can you remember?
Yeah.
You know, I'm assuming you did your first takeoff and landing in the jet. I imagine the feeling compared to your first solo or your first trial flight in a Cessna was very much different. But just, I don't know. Tell me more about it.
Yeah. The best way I can describe like that first flight in the jet, man, I have to like think about like a good metaphor here, but like a ball that's like rolling down a hill and you're chasing after it, but you're never going to catch up. That's like how I felt in my first flight. Obviously, they train you so well at Envoy. Their training is amazing. But like you're taking off, and in my head, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like it's exciting, but everything happened so quickly. I mean, I started training in February and I got my license in April, and I only had like 40 hours in the sim or so. And then you get into the actual airplane and everything kind of, you know, you just, okay, what are my flows? When am I doing the checklist? But you have a check airman with you, right? That's a captain who can basically fly the plane by himself. He didn't need my help, really. He was so nice. But he's, you know, just kind of helping to cue me on what's coming next and kind of getting me comfortable. But I had 4 legs on my first trip. And by the 4th one, I felt pretty good about what I was doing. It's a lot about repetition, you know, but that first initial like takeoff was crazy. My first landing, it was
you nailed it.
Yes.
Well done for greasing your first landing. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
But, so
I don't brag a lot, but that's good.
Well, I'm super jealous. So, you know, you can brag away. But so tell me how many hours you have on the Embraer now, and tell me your current situation.
Yeah. So, oh man, in terms of the actual airplane, the actual flying airplane, I have 11 and a half hours. And then total time in the type, including the simulator, is about probably, you know, 55 or so, about 60. So, you know, unfortunately with coronavirus and everything, COVID-19, I lost my job, and a lot of other pilots lost their jobs too. But I'm very thankful in the fact that the flight school that I was working at before has taken me back, and I'm now teaching their ground schools, their group ground schools. So I teach the instrument and the commercial pilot ground schools to prepare students for the written test that is required by the FAA and their oral portion of their practical test. So that's actually really fun for me. I have a little bit of a teaching background with teaching dance classes and stuff. So I really like that group teaching setting, and I love talking about aviation all day. So I think it's actually kind of a good fit. I don't really need the flight hours, so I'm comfortable, you know, just being on the ground.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about, you know, what's happened with your position at the moment, but does that mean you know, once things get back to normal, you'll be called back up and you'll get your job back, or is there a bit more of a process?
Oh gosh, you know, obviously this is the first time I've gone through this, so I'm not super sure on what's going on. I'm just kind of trying to stay involved. We have a pilot union, and the union has been helping us sort of get through this the best that they can. And the union communicates with the company, and they kind of relay information to us the best that they can. But I think that right now there's just so much that's up in the air. Obviously, when they can, they plan to recall the pilots, but they can only train probably about 60 per month, I would say. So, you know, if you count all 230 of us that have been furloughed, it's going to take a while for that to sort of trickle through. So I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm just trying to be patient and remember that I'll get there eventually. I'll get back eventually.
What are your students saying? Because like you're teaching these kids that are spending thousands of dollars on their training, and they've got no. I mean, what happens? They can't go. They can't get a job at the moment, can they? Right? And you'll be
The
getting a job
whole
before them.
Yes, so the whole pipeline is what we call it, has come to a complete halt. And it trickles down all the way to those poor students. And I feel for them because they do come in and they look stressed. I mean, it's like they don't know what the future is going to hold for them, but they're kind of at the bottom of that, when the pipe starts flowing again, they're all the way at the end, and it's not going to hit them for a much longer time. Obviously when I get recalled, that's going to be great for me, but their life won't change until the airlines actually start hiring off the streets again. And it's hard to say when that's going to be, but once the airlines start hiring off the streets, then the instructors that are currently there can start applying to the airlines. Then all the people who have been waiting to become flight instructors and get a job as flight instructors are going to get those jobs, and then the students that I have currently have to wait until they go to the airline. So it's gonna be a long trickle. But the good news is that, and here's how I like to look at it, the amount of mandatory retirements for all the airlines across the United States. I don't know really how it is in the UK, but I know that American Airlines is going to lose about 15% of their seniority list over the next 8 years or something like that. Those are just rough numbers. I'm not crunching numbers over here, but I think that that's going to make a huge difference, because that's going to open up a lot of opportunity for that flow to move very quickly.
Yeah, I think they extended the retirement age to 65, right? I don't know if they did in America.
Yeah.
I certainly did over here as well. But so that added a few years on. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot of I think they're talking about pilot shortages already in the coming years. So I'm pretty certain if you're looking to be a pilot and thinking about aviation, even if you're 15, 16, whatever, just keep your dream there. I think I don't know if you've seen this, Katie, but on Instagram, there's quite a few pilots that are big Instagrammers or influencers, if you like, in the world of aviation. And a lot of them seem to be quite downbeat on don't consider it as a career, forget your dream, which I can understand. But for me personally, if you have a dream, it's really hard to give up on it. But
yeah, there's a lot of people who put all their eggs in one basket in terms of the airlines, because that's what they were advertising. Stick with us while you're flight instructing, and we'll give you a job all the way until you're 65. And so people are like, yes, here are all my eggs in this basket. And I think that when the airlines, when the industry itself went down with COVID, a lot of people didn't have anything to fall back on. I mean, I don't really have anything to fall back on right now either. I mean, I do have a degree in dance, but I've been out of it for so long. So, trying to get a job doing something else. I know a lot of people right now that are delivering packages for FedEx and Amazon, and people who are working as bartenders, and they're not doing anything aviation related right now.
So we've heard a lot about your background, Katie, but we need to speak to the main woman who's inspired you so much. So should we get your mom on board?
Yes.
So good morning, Robin. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Adam?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We've heard about Katie's story and how she's got into aviation, but we really needed to see the main woman who inspired her to fulfill her career, really. So I'd love to know a bit about you and how you got into aviation in the first place and how it all began for you.
Well, I did not grow up in an aviation family. So mine was purely by chance. And I don't know if, I don't know how or why, but I put my name in a box to win a flying lesson. And they called me the same night and said, we drew your name. Would you like to come out and take the lesson? And I had never been in a small plane before. So I was in college at the time. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So I went out, I went in a Cherokee 140, and the instructor let me pull back on the yoke, and I was amazed at the sights out the window and just loving every second of it. And once I didn't want it to end. And so here we are. many years later, but who would have thought I would step into the seat of a Cherokee 140 and end my career in the left seat of a 787.
That is such an amazing career. But we were talking about our first experiences in terms of aviation earlier, and I think everyone's must be very similar, because you get into an aircraft, no matter what size or what make it is, and you don't want it to stop. You just want to, you're thinking, how can I get back in there as soon as possible, right? And it sounds,
Right.
no matter where you are in the world, you know, male, female, whatever, wherever you're from, everyone's experience must be very similar, which is so, I think it's special to like the aviation community, isn't it? And you've all got, everyone's got that kind of shared experience, I guess, haven't you, with aviation? But so you had your first experience. So how did it develop into a career for you?
Well, I didn't have the money to get a private license at the time, and this, we're talking the late 70s. It was $1,200 American to get a private pilot's license, and I was a college student. I just didn't have that. So what I did do was I bought the ground school package, and I studied, and I actually took the written test before I ever got back in the plane again. And I advise everybody to do that anyway. That's a great way to start, because you don't spend a lot of time with the engine running, learning systems. You've already read about it. So I finally, I working as a waitress, and I finally got enough money to get the private license. And the instructor said, if you want to do it in the minimum time of 40 hours, you need to fly every day if you can, even twice a day. So I took my first lesson on February the 5th, and I got my license on March the 10th.
Wow.
And so it was fast. I did fly, I took his advice, did that. And then, so there I was with a private pilot's license. So I would take friends flying, would share the cost. I did ferry flights there was a dealer on the field, and they needed airplanes moved around and picked up. And I took 3 of my friends to the Bahamas for spring break. I mean, anything I could do to get hours. I hung out at the airport all the time and just waited for somebody to say, oh, you want to come along? Sure. You know, you can get an hour or 2 flying. And eventually I got my instructor's license, and, you know, then now you're getting paid, which is great. I instructed for a couple of years. Then they moved me into the charter department. So I was able to fly part 135 of the FAA rules, charters. And after that, let's see, so then I went to Kansas City, flew some charters there, then got hired by a corporation that had a fleet of airplanes. So I started out in their Navajo, Piper Navajo, and then they moved me into a Mitsubishi MU2, which was turboprop. So that gave me turbine time. Let's see, and then I went with a commuter airline. You know, they call them regionals now, but basically it was a Metroliner. Flew that thing for a year or so, and then got hired by American. So I had about 3,500 hours, and got, you know, was proactive getting hired at American. I actually walked in the office and handed them my resume, and they put me down for an interview right away, because there just weren't that many women. This was 1984, so 84.
So I believe you were one of the first female pilots to be hired by American. That's such
the 11th, which isn't really a pioneer, but, you know, I guess when you're talking tens of thousands of pilots, yes, was, you know, there were, of course, some great ones before me. You probably heard of Beverly Bass. She's the, you know, Come From Away Broadway show. I mean, she's a great spokesperson for women pilots, and we had some other really strong women came before me that kind of paved the way for me.
Well, I think there's only one Robin Shields, right? So, you know, this is your story, and we want to know about what happened. So what happened when you first got your job for American? Were you surprised? Were you, how was it accepted by the males? I mean, you know, I can imagine what it would have been like.
And I have to say, I've had a wonderful experience. Most of the men I mean, there in 35, 36 years, there's been a handful maybe of people that they just didn't understand, didn't know how to react. And back in those days, I mean, there were Playboy pictures in cubby holes all over the cockpit. I mean, it was a man's world. It was the man's world up there. But everyone treated me with respect, and I think once they found out that I actually knew what I was doing, that you know, and I did have to kind of prove that in a way. I felt under pressure to do the best job, do a better job than most, and that's what I did. And they all, you know, came to kind of accept me. And I, you know, I didn't get too wigged out at some of the comments that maybe were today would be taboo, but I mean, there were you know, there were dirty jokes and there were comments, you know, about flight attendants and all kinds of things. And I just, you know, I usually kind of just laughed it off and went back to work. And after a while, I mean, I got a reputation of being a good person to fly with.
What did you love the most about flying for American? Was there a particular destination that you visited, or was it the crew, or a particular aircraft that you were on at the time?
Wow, all of the above. I don't think I can narrow it down. I mean, the people were great. The people, you know, make the job, of course. And it's nice not having a boss to report to. I think that would be terrible to have a job that you had to go in and talk to a boss every day that you didn't like, or didn't like you. So I actually upgraded to captain at American very quickly because of it was a big hiring spree right after I got hired. So in 6 years, I went from flight engineer to left seat of the MD-80.
So you're doing long haul, right?
Pardon me, long haul? Yes, I did for 8 years. I flew the 777 for 5 years, and then I flew the 787, the Dreamliner, for 3.
And how was that? How was life being a mum and being a long haul pilot at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it takes planning. You know, there were nannies and childcare. You know, there was childcare, and I was very, very lucky because at the time that my kids were both born, I was able to bid turnarounds on the MD-80. I was senior enough to hold those, so I could be home every night, and I only flew about 10 days a month. So for 17 years, I, you know, went to work and came home the same day. And I was able to switch those around if I wanted to be in an event or something. So I was really, really lucky in that respect.
That's super cool, because not everyone gets the chance to do that, do they? I guess because some people miss birthdays and Christmases and all that type of stuff. But it sounds that you were very lucky. But I think it's a great message as well for, you know, the whole video is really about inspiring people to fly, and especially more female into aviation. And I think some people have this stigma of, oh, you can't be a mom if you're a pilot, you know. So, you know, you're a living testimony to that.
Well, and you have to remember too, you know, we have 20,000 flight attendants or so, and maybe more, I think. And a good percentage of them are women, and some are men with families, and they make it work the same way I did. I mean, they have the same schedule I did, so it's not just pilots. The flight attendants too have to do the same thing.
Is there something that you've learned through flying that has helped you in other aspects of your life?
Problem solving, maybe. You know, learning all those systems. I guess you know, I'm I'm getting an RV. Well, I don't want to say I'm a motorhome. I'm getting a motorhome. So and it's complicated. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know much about them, but it's like learning a new airplane. So it's helped me to kind of dive into some of the electrical and the plumbing of the motorhome.
Have you ever had any, you know, emergency situations to deal with, any maydays you've had to deal with in your career that you're allowed to talk about?
You know, I've had very few things, which I'm lucky. Only once in my career have I had to shut an engine down, and it was a slow oil leak, and it was on a 727, and so we had 2 others, and we were over a bunch of airports in the United States. So that was really a non-event. Most of the things that I've had to deal with have been passenger issues rather than mechanical things. So as a captain, you have to be a manager, and you have to, sometimes we had to phone patch to a physician to talk to if there wasn't one on board, or I had to delegate, flight attendants to take care of things. They can take care of themselves pretty much, but I mean, I basically everything comes down to me. So someone has to always be flying the airplane, of course, when things are going on. So I would end up turning the airplane over and having to be the one to just manage. In the later years of my career, I basically became a manager.
I guess that's what a captain is, though, right? You're managing problem situations.
Yeah.
A team of people, and 150, 300 people behind you, as well. So,
Yeah.
just out of interest, were you flying on 9/11 as well?
No, I was supposed to go out later that day. Katie was in second grade. And I was supposed to go actually to New York later in the day. But of course, I never left the house. I dropped the kids off at school, and my mom called about 8:45, and she said, "Turn the TV on." She said, "I'm so glad you're home." And then she said to turn the TV on, and I did. And then I called the school because I knew that word would get around, and I knew my kids knew that I was going to be flying. So I just wanted to make sure they knew that I was home. But that was quite a day.
Did it put you off flying after that, or?
No, it didn't. No. I was very lucky. A lot of people did end up having to get furloughed not long after that. But no, I've always kept my job. But things did change in the airline industry, just like this pandemic is going to change things. Things changed with 9/11 for sure. New bulletproof doors and new procedures and that kind of thing.
So obviously you've recently just retired on the Dreamliner. What was it like to fly the Dreamliner?
It's a dream. That's the reason they call it the Dreamliner. It is. It's a dream to fly. It's just like, it's a pilot's airplane, and I'm kind of partial to Boeing anyway. But even though I did spend a long time on an MD-80, which is now Boeing, I guess. But yeah, it's a great airplane. It's very does everything for you. We joke about it at American. It's an old person's airplane because it's so easy. You don't have to remember a lot. It reminds you, so it's good.
And was there any particular aircraft that you'd wish that you'd got a rating on, or wish that you'd flown? Like do you fancy a 747 or a A380, or is there anything?
That's more. I think I've flown the best airplanes there were to fly, but I've got type ratings. I've flown the 727. I've got type ratings on the 757, 767, 777, 787. But I don't have one on the 737 or the 747. So I guess, that'd be kind of fun to say, or the 717. It'd be fun to say I had all the Boeing ratings, but, that's not going to happen. But that would be fun. I'm sure someone out there does.
What would you say to future pilots and in particular women that are looking to or thinking about a career in aviation? What would your message be to those people?
Well, go for it. I mean, that's the best job in the world, and it does have its ups and downs, no pun intended, but it does have its ups and downs as far as the economy and things that, pandemics and terrorist attacks, and even just, I don't know, just the economy in general. I mean, so expect to get furloughed, to have a savings account available so that you can live for a few months if you do. But keep reaching for that dream, because once you get to that point, and it's a long road up there, it was for me. Once you get there, it's just great, I think. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to fly for the airlines because flying a little plane is so much, that's real flying." But heck, there's nothing like taking off with 300 people in the back. Everyone has their story. You're getting them where they want to go. see relatives, see someone get married, whatever it is. I think it's pretty cool that I have that, you know, that ability to get them there and safely.
So you got to fly with your daughter Katie, right, recently?
We did. It was my last flight, and I didn't know it was my last flight, but I just happened to be doing a Dallas turn, and we do that sometimes on the 787. And I called her, she, you know, living in Dallas. I said, hey, I'm going to be coming through there. It'd be so, you know, I wish I could see you. And she was with Envoy at the time and had jump seat benefits. So she said, well, why don't I just book the jump seat and ride back to Chicago with you, and then I can head back to Dallas. I'm like, wow, that'd be so cool. Yeah, let's do that. So she did. And she flew with me in the cockpit, which I've always wanted. And then after that flight, they came out, you know, that was March 8th. The pandemic was getting revved up. And it was shortly after that they, you know, they offered this early out, and it's a good deal. And I thought, you know, it's time. I've done everything. I've been safe my whole career. I've flown the top airplane, and I've had a great career, and I think it's time. I can, you know, I had a couple of years and change to go till I actually did have to retire, you know, make room for one of the young ones.
Katie, tell me what that flight was like with your mom. Talk me through it.
It's funny. She's gonna hate me for saying this, but I have to because it's funny. My mom sometimes, I mean, she can, but sometimes watching her try to work her iPhone is like the most frustrating thing. But then to see her in the cockpit of a 787, like doing all of that stuff, it's like, what? Like, this woman can hardly work her iPhone, but she can fly a 787. So I mean, she
person's airplane.
I know we joke about that all the time, but no, it was actually, I mean, she was just so comfortable, you know, sitting up there, and it was really cool to see, like, just kind of another day on the job for her, which growing up, I never got an opportunity to really see what that was like. And like, you know, being in training with Envoy and kind of learning the ropes of what it's like to be an airline pilot, and then seeing it in action, you know, with the big leagues was really cool. Just even if it wasn't my mom, like, it was still really cool just to kind of be up there and see the whole show and everything happen. And her first officer was so great. He was a really nice guy. They worked really well together, and they just got it done. And it was like, wasn't really like a big event. It was just kind of like the job.
That's exactly right. You can fly with, you know, you fly with people you've never flown with before, and everyone does everything. They know their job. It just is like clockwork. It must be like, you know, if you're a doctor and you're doing surgery, that must be kind of how it's like, because let me have the checklist, blah, blah, blah. It's like everything is so orchestrated.
I guess like Katie was saying, it's a bit like dancing, right? You know, you've got a Strictly over there. We've got Strictly here. You know, it's a bit like you guys having well, not you guys, you two, but you and your co-pilot doing a bit of a dance to take off and land and fly around. And, you know, it's a good analogy. Thank you, Katie, for that. I'm going to use that in the future.
And, you know, when you're a co-pilot, you kind of learn from the people that you're flying with. And, you know, you learn what not to do and what to do. And there are a lot of things, you know, that's what I did. It's like, if I felt really comfortable with someone, I'd be like, yeah, that's the way I want to be a captain. Or, you know, if their demeanor and there were some captains that a lot of them that I'd say, I don't want to do that, you know, that kind of thing. But most everyone is really, really good. Never had any real issues.
And Katie, can you tell us whether your mom nailed the landing back in Chicago? And did she hand fly it, or was it autopilot down to like 50 feet or whatever and then just take it out? Spill the beans. Tell us what happened.
So it was, I think, a little bit challenging because there was a crosswind and it was pretty turbulent on final approach. And the sun was right in her eyes. So, you know, all of those things combined, but I thought it was a good landing. Obviously, in her opinion, I'm sure it wasn't her best, but I feel like every time she would go on a trip, she would call me, you know, we'd be talking on the phone and she'd say, I just had the best landing of my career or whatever. And it was like, the next day she'd say the same thing. I'm like, didn't you just say this the other day? So I think that, for being her last landing, it was probably a little bit challenging, but it was obviously still a good one. So probably just not to her standard.
Probably an 8. I'd give it an 8. It was okay.
An 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
So I guess
she hand flew.
I guess it was meant to happen, right? That was your last flight. You had your daughter on your flight. I mean, everything kind of aligned.
Yeah.
To happen.
Yeah, I didn't get the fire hoses. I didn't get the water salute, but that's okay. It was. I wouldn't trade that for having Katie in the jump seat. That was so great.
Yeah, I guess not many people have the opportunity to have their son or daughter or family member to be able to witness that unknowingly at the time, but still to be there. You've got the photo. It's so cool. But I guess, so are you going to fly now? Small aircraft, or is that it for flying?
It's been 9 months since I stepped foot in an airplane. To fly. And I'm kind of like, my mind is now going toward this motorhome, just to see the United States and all the sights that I've seen from the air that I want to see from the ground. And just, maybe sometime I'll get the urge to fly again. I just don't, I'd feel like a fish out of water in a small plane. I'd have to probably start from the beginning. Katie gave one lesson.
Yeah, it's funny, like once you get to the airlines, you almost don't really want to go back to general aviation.
Some do.
I don't know if you
know a lot of people that's all they do is they fly a trip and then they go home and build their airplane, or whatever. But for me, no. And once I had kids too, I didn't want to go back to general aviation either. I just the airlines were good enough. It was good. It was the kind of flying I wanted to do in the end.
Just a quick question on a destination. What was the most challenging airfield or airport that you've flown into?
Oh, challenging. Well, New York LaGuardia, that's pretty, that can be kind of challenging, although it was kind of fun sometimes. That probably, because the runways are short, there's water at both ends, it's kind of out there built on a dock or whatever, and it's, so maybe let's see where else challenging. I never flew in the one airport everybody talks about is Tegucigalpa, and I think it's in Honduras. But I never flew in there. We flew in there on the 757, and you had to be specially qualified with a Czech airman. Very challenging. Let's see.
Didn't you say Tokyo? Was it Tokyo that was challenging with the crosswinds?
They did have crosswinds there, but I can't remember. I remember departing there one time when there was a typhoon approaching, but I don't remember. Nothing. Every airport that I flew those airplanes into was pretty good airport. So nothing real challenging. LaGuardia probably was the most.
But I guess Chicago is known as the Windy City, and I imagine, and the weather, when you have snow there, you have snow, right? So.
We can. In fact, I can remember coming in to O'Hare during a big snowstorm. I want to say it was 5 years ago, and it was February. Huge snowstorm. We were in a holding pattern, and the winds were really gusting, and the runway was covered with snow, and they kept switching runways so they could plow one and use another. And we're doing all of our calculations. We literally had 1 knot of wind to spare before we were out of legality and we would have to go to Minneapolis. So I remember breaking out, the landing lights and all the snow coming at you from the lights. And the runway was totally covered in snow, and just touching down and, not trying to brake hard, just, the hardest part about that is finding an exit, because the exits get covered with snow and you're not sure exactly where the line is. So you definitely don't want to run off in the ditch or anything, but there were some challenging weather days, definitely. And we get thunderstorms too here, pretty big.
So, Katie, do you have anything you want to say to your mom for inspiring you to, for your career?
Oh, I mean, I would not be where I am without her, obviously, but I guess, she knows how I feel. I tell her all the time. And I think that, she has taught me so many lessons, like life lessons that have helped me to be a successful just adult in general. Um, so like something that my mom says all the time is life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you make of it. So yes, there are a lot of ups and downs in aviation, but how you handle all of that and how you get past it and get through it, is really up to you. So that was a really cool thing to learn from her, and I apply that almost daily. And then, just another thing is she's always kind of taught me like to remain humble. And she hasn't ever really said that, but I've just seen how humble she's been through her whole career. She could walk around and boast about how great she is and all this stuff. And she really doesn't. She, just kind of believes she's this average, average Sally Sue or whatever, but she's not. She's an incredible woman. She's an incredible woman who has worked through adversity in many different ways, and raised a family doing what she does, and with grace, absolute grace. I mean, she I can't remember a time that my mom missed things because of work. And I think it's just because of the way that she maybe framed it. If she did have to miss stuff, it was just like, well, mom's got to go to work, but it's okay. She'll be around for the next one. I don't really remember ever kind of like being sad about her being gone, because it was her job. And I always thought it was so cool. But I think that, in terms of aviation, something that she's really taught me is to just kind of nod and smile, is like she says that a lot. Just nod and smile. Like, you're going to come across people that are mean or egotistical or whatever, but if you just nod and smile and keep doing your job and keep being a happy person, it's going to come around full circle for you. And those are just kind of some of the things I'm thankful for that she's taught and instilled in me.
Wow, I'm touched. That's so nice. Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
I guess, Robin, as well, you must be super proud of Katie, right? She's following in your footsteps.
Yes. She has worked so hard. I mean, really, seriously, this girl, from the minute, she came to me, what, 3 years ago or so, a little more?
Yeah, about 3.5.
Maybe I should try flying. And I said, okay, but let's go take an intro ride and see how you like it. And then if you like it, take the written before you take another lesson.
She made me take the written before I could have another lesson. So
you did it. And then, boy, we picked ATP.
Yeah.
She went there for their crash course. I hate to say that word, but it was a fast track course. And man, you studied your buns off there. I mean, you were, right? You were like, you ate, slept, drank aviation for 7 months.
Everything.
Yeah, it took her 7 months to get all her licenses and ratings and Britons and check rides, everything. Crazy. But you did it, and now here you are. And you initiated a lot of stuff on your own, like being an Envoy cadet, that kind of thing. So
I like what you said earlier about you walked into American Airlines office and just said, right, here's my CV, you need to hire me. I love that attitude, and I think obviously Katie's taken that on board, either consciously or subconsciously, and doing that herself with Envoy. And it's really, really nice to see, and a great quality of,
it's different now, though. They've got, they don't even, you can't like just walk your application in anymore like you used to be able to. It's all done online.
All online.
All the interviews are online, and it's crazy. But yeah, with American, I had 3 interviews I had to go down there for. One was just a personnel interview, and then I had to come back for this barrage of medical and psychological testing. I mean, they literally hooked electrodes up to my head to, and flash lights to see if I had epilepsy, I guess. And, they did some wild stuff. And then I came back for a 3rd interview, and it was a captain's board. There was like a mean captain and a nice captain and kind of a middle of the road captain. And I guess they wanted to see how I would react to different personalities. And I don't know. I got through it. I got through it, but I'm glad I did, because what a great career it has been.
Well, I think you guys should write a book and share this with other people. I think it'd be a bestseller. You should get it on Amazon, start writing it while you're in your RV, going around the States. And, I'll take 10% for coming up with the idea, if that's okay.
I hope to have some writing, Adam. Very good. I like it. I like that idea. That's cool.
Yeah, do it definitely. But listen, thank you so much for both coming on the vlog today, and I've loved talking about and hearing about your story, and hopefully more people will get to watch this video and be inspired to get into aviation, male and female. And no matter where you are in the world, it's the same feeling like we talked about at the beginning. So hopefully this will inspire other people to at least get into aviation, and things will get bounced back pretty much sooner or later. And obviously I know you guys are both on Instagram, so if that's okay, I'll link your Instagram accounts in this video, and perhaps if they want to ask you a question directly, they can, or in the comments of this video.
Okay.
Yes, just like Iris said, they can come straight into the DMs. That we're good with that.
Well, you guys have a lovely Christmas and festive period, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thanks, Adam.
Merry Christmas.
See you later.